Come along with me while I install a full head of tape-in hair extensions. I'll be sharing the exact technique that I use to install these extensions, along with all of my best tips and tricks, and the exact products that I use to achieve this transformation. Hello my loves, it's Danielle here. I am so excited to bring you today's video. Today I'm working with Newtimes Hair. You can find them at newtimeshair.com. They sent me 2 bundles of their 100 gram tape-in extensions, and the shade that I have installed in my hair is shade 68613. So I was so thrilled when Newtimes Hair reached out to me. I'm always looking to work with different brands, and so anytime that a brand reaches out to me, I'd like to really do my research, and they're essentially a one-stop shop. So Newtimes Hair is a manufacturer, and they're responsible for making extensions, wigs, men's toppers, and toupees as well. They offer such an amazing variety of different professional products. So I'll show you what the tape-in extensions look like and kind of run through a little bit more of information. So first of all, can we talk about how adorable this packaging is? So upon receiving the extensions, they were packaged in netting, and here is what they look like. So again, this is shade 68613. They offer such a variety of different shades. Everything is so customizable, and you'll be able to find anything that you're looking for on their website. So just a little item to touch on. When holding this up to my natural hair, while it is not installed, you can see that these do come up a little bit more warm, but the way that they blended together was just so beautifully. And as you guys can tell, they just have this amazing ability to pick up the natural tone of the hair. So I like to do a little bit of a test when I'm working with extensions. I call it the feel test. So immediately after taking these out of the box, I ran my fingers through them and really tried to get a sense of the quality of this extension, because as hairdressers, we always want to give the best for our clients. So after I unboxed these and I gauged the quality of the hair and comparing it to the brand that I used to use, I mean, truly, these by far surpassed the quality of the other brand that I was using. So I installed these on myself, on my own. I used a lot of mirrors. So you guys are looking at post-installation and post-haircut today. I actually washed these as well, because I feel like when I'm applying extensions, they do come treated, and after you give them a good wash, I feel like you're really able to gauge the texture and where the hair is lying. So I like to go in and cut my hair after it's been washed. I added a bit of angling and a bit of layering so that it looked as natural as possible, and I could not love the results anymore. So a little bit about the installation method that I decided to go with. I use the bricklaying pattern because I feel I'm able to get a lot of coverage without overfilling the hair that way. And I'll share a little tip of mine with you guys when it comes to installation. And this is true for the I-tip extensions as well. I like to work from the ear down, as opposed to going from the bottom and working all the way up to the top. Now, the reason I find this is really successful for me is because I'm able to gauge the placement much better when I'm laying the foundation up top, so that when I work my way down, I'm not overfilling the hair. So as I'm working my way down, I'm able to see if the hair is filled enough or if another row is necessary. This is incredibly important because as a hairdresser, especially with clients who are first-time extension users, you have to be very transparent about the differences after extensions are installed. And 2 huge things that I like to cover is the difference in weight after installation and the styling upkeep. So these 2 things are really important to communicate with your clients, because if you're overfilling and adding extra weight that isn't necessary, they're gonna feel uncomfortable, they're gonna have pulling, and it's not gonna be the best experience for them. And we want to avoid any kind of discomfort in the extension installation process. So transparency is key, and also making sure to not overfill and add too much weight and density to the hair. But of course, that's where a consultation comes in, so you always want to cover these topics when you're discussing extensions. So if you're ready to start the installation process with my Newtimes hair extensions, then let's go.
All right, let's get started. So I made sure to part my hair from the ear down, keeping my sections as clean as possible. Clean sections are so important during the hair extension installation process. So I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch from the scalp and I'm applying my first piece. I'm making sure to stick that and secure that really tightly. Now I'm taking my comb and I'm inserting it underneath the bond, and what that's going to do is pull up any hair that's naturally supposed to be stuck to the top bond. I'm then inserting the bottom bond underneath it and sandwiching the natural hair in between. I'm also leaving 1/4 of an inch in between my bonds. Now, another way to install these, which some people prefer, is to pre-measure out a very thin slice of hair and stick a bond on the top of that slice and on the bottom, sandwiching the hair in between. However, the reason why I don't prefer that method is because sometimes you could pick up too thick of a slice of hair, and then the two pieces of the extensions have too much hair in between and it doesn't properly seal. So this is why I find it the most effective to just stick the top on to the hair directly, let it pull up any hair that naturally should be stuck to it, and then sandwich the bottom bond underneath it. Now, spacing during the installation process is incredibly important, horizontally but vertically as well. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, you're going to have your straight across rows that run parallel, but you're going to be building above and underneath the current row that you're looking at right now. And when you space them properly, that's going to avoid any kind of bulk or any kind of overlapping that's going to cause the hair to sit unnaturally on the head. I remember in cosmetology school when we were learning to install extensions, there would be this very noticeable bump, the extension bump, and that is really what we're trying to avoid here. So in order to avoid the extension bump from overfilling or going too close to the scalp, we have to take into account the curvature of the head. So here I am already about to finish row 1, and you can already tell the amount of coverage that I've built with just this one row. So as I begin to work my way lower and lower, due to the pattern that I'm using, which I mentioned is the bricklaying pattern, I'll be using less pieces on the row underneath, and in between each bond where you see my natural hair shining through is now where I'll be placing that bond in the center of. So it's just like bricklaying. So on this row now, I'll shift my bond over, making sure that it is directly in the center of the row above it. And that's how I'm going to avoid getting any gaps. And that's how I'll close any type of hole in between the extensions. Also to note, as I'm making my way down, there is less space, so there will naturally be less extensions used. And you always want to be sure that you're allowing for enough room at the hairlines so that if you do want to pull your hair back, the extension does not show. Now, each different method of hair extension installation does come with its own set of tools, and there actually is a very helpful tool. It's a plier-like tool that you can use that will really help to secure the top and bottom bonds together. Some people really prefer to work with it, or you can just use a little bit of good old-fashioned elbow grease to make it stick. So the extensions that I'm using are Newtimes Hair's regular tape-in extensions where you can see the bond at the top. However, they also have invisible bond hair extensions, which actually look like they're coming directly out of the scalp. It is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So that's another wonderful option that they offer. And all of the extensions that they offer are 100% Remy human hair, which means they can all be styled. So now that my bottom 2 rows are down, I want to pull it forward and assess and see what these look like. As you can see, a perfect example of the bricklaying pattern when I pull the pieces apart is that one extension is in the center of the row above it, and that's exactly what we want it to look like.
So 2 rows are installed already, and I think what I'm going to do is, after straightening, I can still see a bit of a line. So I'm gonna go ahead and install 1 more row, which is why I like to work from the ear down, because it's so easy to see if you need more density. And right now I do. So I'm gonna do 1 more row and then I'll be right back.
So because the bottom of my hair is very blunt, I felt it would be best to just add 1 more tiny row of extensions. So this will be my smallest row, while still making sure to continue with the bricklaying pattern. So another item to mention, and a huge tip of mine, is that the reason for laying the top bond lower, about 1/4 of an inch down from the scalp, is because if it's up too high, when you lay the bottom bond on, it's going to again puff outward from the scalp and not lay at 0 elevation. So because again we have to take into account the natural curvature of the head in order for both bonds to seal properly and cause no additional bulk, the top bond would have to naturally be slightly further away from the scalp than the bottom bond. So this little tip is the key in getting your extensions to lie flat. And I zoomed in because this is a perfect example of what I'm explaining. I am meeting the bottom bond all the way up as high as I possibly can insert it, so that it's even with the top bond, which is slightly lower off the scalp. You want to see your natural root above the top extension. And again, I'm going in, removing any extra hair that shouldn't be underneath the top bond, and sandwiching my bottom bond as high as I can get it, and making sure to get that tight seal. Another huge factor in order to avoid bulk is the higher you get to the top of the scalp, you can also adjust the amount of extensions that you're using. So you'll see in the row above the one that I'm currently working on, I actually did not use 2 back-to-back extensions, but rather I just use one-sided extension. Each person's scalp is going to be different depending on the density of their hair, whether their hair is fine, whether it's coarse, whether they have a lot of hair, whether their hair is super thick. So each extension job really is super customizable, and no single job will ever be the same as another one. Another reason to be sure to avoid overfilling is, again, as I had mentioned earlier, because the extensions do come highly treated and very straightened. So after you do a first wash, it's natural that the extensions will thicken up. And sometimes I've noticed in clients that have never had extensions before, it's kind of a big shock at first because they basically have doubled the amount of hair that they now have on their head. And sometimes that can be a bit of an adjustment for the client, so we just want to make sure that they're as happy as possible. And I am on my final row. Now, because of the layering that I have in my natural haircut, this is as high as I'm willing to go because I know that if I go any higher, I'll run the risk of the bonds showing. After I finished installing this final row of the one-sided extensions, I went in and did a very rough trim just to get my hair at the length that I had wanted it to fall at. After the trim, I gave the extensions a good wash that night, and then I went in and did a ton of layering and angling in the front to make the extensions blend as beautifully as possible. And honestly, that's the most important part of extensions for me, is not being able to tell whether or not you have them in your hair. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this helped answer any questions that you may have had with regards to the tape-in installation process. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out newtimeshair.com and all of the fantastic products that they have to offer. If you have any questions at all, please be sure to leave them in the comments. I love getting comments from you guys and I try to answer every single one of them. And I'm just going to be out here living my best mermaid life with this long, beautiful hair.